You have been watching News 3's special coverage of the funeral for Sergeant Kelvin Ansari, the Savannah police officer who died in the line of duty 1 week ago today. The live pictures that we have been bringing you have been from Calvary Baptist Temple in Savannah. That is where we just witnessed a ceremony that lasted about 2 hours on this Saturday morning and now into afternoon. So the tributes to the sergeant continue now. This day where we celebrate his service and sacrifice. The next item on the agenda for today is a processional on the way to Bonaventure Cemetery where the officer will be laid to rest today. Hundreds of people in attendance at this celebration of life today. Certainly a lot of those people outside the church waiting to escort his body are thinking about the words of his pastor, Pastor Ricky Temple, one of the final people to address the congregation in front of the pulpit there. He said he asked them to learn to see beyond the difficult days that they've experienced so far, to make a decision to not let anger blur their vision going forward. Certainly so much sadness in the crowd today, the pastor trying to uplift them and help them move beyond these difficult days and see the future. He said they must believe that we can move beyond this pain into something better. We have to mention the performances given by Huxley Scott today. Of course, a legendary Savannah soul singer with the Savannah Theater for some 40 years. Two amazing renditions of Amazing Grace and How Great Thou Art. This would also be a good time to mention that as the procession makes its way from Midtown Savannah to the east side of our city, this will affect traffic flow in the area. So if you're just joining us on the live stream, this procession will be taking place from the Baptist Temple there, about 63rd Street, going down Waters Avenue, north on Waters, and it will turn east on Victory Drive. And we'll also travel to Skidaway Road and then turn north once again and end up in Bonaventure Cemetery. So those parts of Savannah will be off limits to motorists while this is happening. We know those roads have already been blocked off. If you do find yourself near the route, certainly the city encourages you to go and pay your respects to Sergeant Ansari. You can do so by standing along the road. They just ask that you try to stay out of the roadway as the motorcade is making its way through. We do have a team of reporters covering this event for us today. We want to go to News 3's Andrew Davis, who has been outside of the Baptist Temple for several hours, actually attended the service as well, with his thoughts about today's gathering. Okay, we're waiting for Andrew to get in position there. We did hear from several officials today from the city and actually from the state as well. Representative Carl Gilliard was one of the folks who was tasked with passing on some acknowledgments from the state of Georgia. He thanked the family of Sergeant Ansari for sharing their hero with this community. He also read a resolution that honored his life and his service. Those remarks made on behalf of the state of Georgia. And now we have News 3's Andrew Davis, who is outside of the church for us.
Finished up seeing that moment with pretty emotional just to look at it, with all the officers standing by saluting Kelvin Ansari as his body was officially placed back into the funeral situation. And sorry, I'm breathing a little heavy. I had to move around the corner here, so we're trying to get you so we can get a good look at the processional as it goes along. But the ceremony itself, exactly, I think, what Kelvin would have wanted, understated in many ways, quiet in some ways, not quite as fully emotional or as bombastic as it could be. You have to, you brought up the Huxley Scott performances earlier, which of course were, as always, fantastic here. I wanted to bring up Pastor Charles Roberson, who started this entire thing by saying we're hurting after hearing just 5 words last Saturday. He did not make it. I think that set a tone for everybody in there, because that's exactly what everyone felt, that this past week has been so hard for everyone concerned. You can actually hear some of the loud crying noises, though, in the rectory as this was going on, just after it started, as people dealt with some of their emotions as they went along. Brought up again that picture that you've seen all week, the "Why I Wear the Badge," because you feel like it's my calling to serve people. That's what Sergeant Kelvin Ansari put on that several years ago when they asked why he served and why he wanted to wear that badge. A picture that has become sort of iconic in Savannah now for a lot of that. Huxley Scott's Amazing Grace truly brought down the house in many ways, brought a lot of tears to people's eyes with the emotion that it had behind it. Mayor Eddie DeLoach then stepped up and said the debt of gratitude that we owe Sergeant Ansari can never be repaid, and that his sacrifice will never be forgotten. Eddie said he always starts his speeches with, "It's a great day in Savannah," but unfortunately for the last week that's not been true, that we've all felt the hurt and the pain that's connected to Kelvin Ansari's loss, any officer's loss here in Savannah, but especially one as well liked and respected as he. Officer Alan Childs was very quick. He was one of the people that Ansari was overseeing for just a few weeks, but didn't have a lot to say other than how much he respected and cared about the man, and said he'd like his life and accomplishments to speak for itself. And I think that's probably the way that even Kelvin Ansari, who was once again dedicated as funny but quiet, but together with everything that he did. We're currently waiting for the honor guard to come through. They're all getting on their bikes as we speak to lead the processional over to Bonaventure Cemetery. Lieutenant Greg Mitchell spoke after that. He was a great friend of Kelvin Ansari. Talked to me earlier this week about how much fun they had, that they laughed every time they saw each other. And he talked about everyone that he was overseeing. He said he treated them with respect, kindness, and of course, wisdom. Chief Roy Minter spoke to everybody, talked about his accomplishments, talked about various things in Ansari's background and career, including an email he sent to some of his new arrivals, new people that he would be overseeing there, and talked about how simple it was, but yet it stated him. He talked about being a family man. He talked about the caring and love he had for the police department and the fact he followed the rules at all costs, and that was important to him every step of the way. The family, of course, it was stated that they didn't have to have that private ceremony, so instead they were thanked. A standing ovation to thank them for sharing Sergeant Kelvin Ansari's service and sharing Sergeant Kelvin Ansari with all of us. And that's exactly what you got to see during that live stream if you got to watch most of it there. The speeches were quick. They were relatively understated. The music played loud and strongly. We also listened to Pastor Ricky, who talked specifically about the officers and making sure that they didn't try to some sort of retaliation or let them affect them that way. Instead, they need to keep doing their jobs as he would and not focus on what would happen instead, but start focus on what they needed to do to better themselves, to better their jobs, and to better this city. Jeffrey Hilliard, who's the family spokesman, talked about having to love, honor, and respect you all now and to infinity. He said he could only repeat just what that memory would be and what that means somewhere. He never fell short, Hilliard said. Even when he couldn't, he did his best. And that's what everybody spoke of highly here. Chatham County Police, you're talking about Bullitt County Sheriffs in this, also various sheriff's offices and police departments from around the area. As far away as Texas and California, I understand, were here. I spoke to a young woman from Panama City, Florida, who worked with Ansari, who said she wouldn't have missed it because she knew Kelvin would want him here and she would want to pay her respects to this. There are a lot of police officers. I'm going to step out of the camera here so you can take a look at some of the other things going on as some of the members of the crowd come by. Give me a second while I'm doing this, and you can see the officers in the back here. A lot of officers lined up to take part in that processional that will go to Bonaventure Cemetery. People also starting to line up. A lot of them here you can see from the hospital next door. Nurses and doctors who want to pay their respects as well behind the Savannah police cars. They weren't able to make it to the service because obviously they are working, but they wanted to be here. So many people wanted to be here to be part of this, to take part in all this. And these young folks right here who wanted to be part, who said they wanted to be here to say goodbye to an American hero, military service and a Savannah police officer all in one. He's their hero in so many ways. Khalil Maycock will be at some of the other parade routes, or the processional routes, so you can see some of those situations. We've had several of these people who've been lined up for about 2 or 3 hours to make sure they get their spot along this route so they get to see the processional go by, so they get to pay their final respects to Sergeant Ansari without actually being in the church and being there. You can see those officers now lining up to take part in this processional. The bikes still are not moving yet. The casket is inside the hearse. And everyone is getting themselves settled. A lot of the officers, they're going to take some time to get everybody into this processional that's going to be so necessary. So we're going to turn it back around here for you and show you exactly what's going on. But this is where we're at with so much of this, is that the emotions are so high, the people care so much, because Savannah is a small town in many ways, and that one of theirs is one of all of ours. He's a family member in many ways. Whether you met him on the beat, whether you just knew of him, or you just heard his name for the first time last week, the people of Savannah want to make sure that they said goodbye and they said the right thing to this man, to this really American hero for what he did both in the military and right here. Of course, we talked about his service in Iraq and Afghanistan and Kuwait. So even before, 21 years in the military and jumped directly into the service for the police department. And you look at that, he was only 50 years old when he died. And as they said, so think about that number when it's done. Ben, it is going to be emotional out here for everyone. As you can see, the police cars begin to travel behind me in this processional one by one. The motorcycles aren't here yet, though. So Ben, we'll toss it back to you for a second and see what you have to say.
Yeah, Andrew, I wanted to, I know you got to witness some moments that were not on camera today. I think in particular an interaction between some elected officials, including the governor and the family. What can you tell us about that? This happened before the service began.
Yeah, they were right there. It was very interesting to see that because all the elected leaders came forward along with a lot of the main command staff from the Savannah Police Department as the family arrived, and they proceeded to go ahead and have that family give them the hugs and give them that emotion. We couldn't hear what they said, but Governor Kemp was first and foremost in that line. He wanted to make sure he paid his respects, as did a lot of those leaders from the Savannah Police Department and the city leaders who, of course, knew Ansari and over the last week have gotten to know his family as well. It was a nice show of respect because there are so many children involved. There's some children who will not see their father again, and there was that talk of, well, he won't be able to color with you again, but he's always there with you with those crayons, with that support and with the coloring. I was touched by what it was because I hadn't seen that before. A lot of times the family will just walk in and get their moment as they walk into the church, but instead they put all the officers in from all over the area, then put the family in so they could have their moment. They could stand that way, not be interrupted, other than that brief moment at the beginning where people like the mayor, like the governor, were able to say something. So I think it was a special moment for them, hopefully, in this incredible time of sorrow and anger as they go along. I can only hope it gave them a little bit of solace as we step forward. The rumbling you may hear behind me is the Patriot Guard, who have now lined up, and they, of course, will be part of this processional for Sergeant Kelvin Ansari. A lot of former military in that group, usually people who want to pay their respects to all the fallen, whether it's military or police. They're coming up. I'll step aside so you can take a look at them here. My apologies for shoddy camera work, but I'm working it all here to try to get it all done. But that'll see there that rumble, that famous rumble in many ways of the motorcycles of the Patriot Guard. The respect, the honor that these guys show to all of them, riding with respect, it says right there. So they'll be leading this processional. The police bikes still have not turned on. They've not moved over, so right now we're at the bikes. I don't know for you, Ben, but I wanted to talk for a minute. The most poignant moment to me was probably Jeffrey Hilliard, the family spokesperson, who got to say a lot more to us than I expected. He really had a lot to say. The family itself didn't want to speak, but we wanted to make sure that you could hear what the family had to say and what Jeffrey Hilliard wanted to say, talking about that family and how much it meant to them, the support they've gotten from Savannah, and also the support that they've gotten from the police department. Roy Minter said he met with Charlotte, his wife, multiple times, and were able to get to know them a little bit better, since obviously he is so new on the job and wouldn't have known Sergeant Ansari that well. So behind me, the rumbling, if you can still hear me, of that Patriot Guard as I step aside to see them ready. I'll show you here the nurses and doctors as they've come out carrying their flags, the blue flags with the thin blue line on them.
Well, Andrew, we know that so many people are joining in to make sure that this goes off without a hitch today. I know you had some information about how other agencies were stepping up to the aid of Savannah Police, because clearly most of the Savannah Police Force did attend this service today. So can you tell us how other agencies have sort of answered the call to help?
Yeah, I talked to Effingham County sheriffs, and they've offered to do their part. Chatham County sheriffs also were taking calls in various areas throughout the county and the Savannah area for the police department, so they could show up at this service today. Everyone really has. Bullock County is here. A lot of them, even like Floyd County, who I've truly never even heard of, Floyd County, but Floyd County came out and wanted to pay their respects and also said they will do anything they could to help. Bullock County's been helping. It's really been an outreach from everywhere. I even saw officers from Bluffton over in South Carolina who came over here, some to pay their respects and some to say, we'll run a call if need be, we'll run to help, because and no matter what, even during the funeral, those radios were on. They were not going to let crime happen in this city. I saw them. One of the captains, Captain Gundich, had his radio at the ready. So in case something happened, he knew that there would be people to cover that. I think that's the bonding that you feel, because they are all one family, no matter what department they are. They know how much this hurts. They know how much these people need some grieving and some moments to themselves. I mean, some of the officers from the precinct that Ansari moved on to actually had till Wednesday to try to even pull themselves together, because they wouldn't have done any good on the street or anywhere else for a few days. So I think that was really well put together. Talking to police and city leaders too, they said, you know what, we felt that we did very nicely with Officer Christie and treated him with the respect he deserved, but we wanted to do this even more and right this time. And I think from everything we've seen so far, they absolutely have done this right. This has been a week of mourning, a week of respect for Sergeant Ansari and for police officers everywhere who say it happened to fall on National Police Week too. The ironies in that case, people were giving donuts, they were doing everything they could at various officers around because this case touched them. This made national news for so many people because this was a man who left with 6 kids, who was military, who had everything in his hands, and yet decided that he wanted to step forward and do this. So I've been touched by the outpouring of support and also the job that Savannah Police have done to try to make sure that Sergeant Ansari is treated correctly. And I'll
beginning to move out.
Step aside for you for a minute so you can look at what's going on.
Can you hear me? Andrew, I'm curious if you could give us, we know we see the Patriot Guard there queuing up to take part in the processional. We can see this one part of it. Can you give us an idea of the scale of this procession? How many vehicles or cars do we think are going to be involved? What's the scope of it?
If you look at it, Ben, I'll walk away from the camera just for a minute to see. I'd say there are 30 motorcycles that are from local police and sheriffs, not to mention the Patriot Guard, which have to be 40 or 50 deep. I see Savannah police cars. I see Chatham police cars. This will be hundreds, probably. I would say close to 150 or 200 with the blue lights that are coming down 63rd Street right now. I'll turn around so you can see this for everybody. And you can see some of the blue lights now coming down 63rd Street, also from Calvary Baptist Temple. There's a line that I can't see the end of from where I am. Looking at it, so everyone is involved. They want to make sure the streets will be blocked properly and that Ansari's body can get to the cemetery in the quick fashion that it deserves. Obviously, you've talked many times about how many streets are going to be blocked, how many traffic issues this is going to make, from the level of everybody's going to want to stay away from these entire areas while the police escort goes down. Patriot Guard are about halfway down the road. The fire trucks are blocking roads as well in several different spots. I see a Mount Pleasant police car now when we talk about all the people from various departments around the entire area and really around the nation. But this is Savannah's show. This is the Savannah Police. This is everyone else is just here to show their love and support for Savannah Police. But they are running the show and they are taking care of this to make sure that everybody gets the proper due that they deserve when it connects to all this. There's a little fence back here, but I'll show you. These are the motorcycles of the various sheriffs and police officers that are lined up right there. There's a lot of movement, a lot of people talking about getting people moving here, so I think we're very close to getting this professional started. Sorry for the fence in front of you. That's unfortunately the best angle I can get to still get the processional here. I'll try to move this over so you can see more of the processional as it goes down the street. It's almost amazing. I've been through a lot of these, and usually you can see them. There may be 50 or 100 deep for a lot of the military funerals. This may be the largest I've ever seen, Ben, when you talk about scope and size. So I think I'm amazed at what we're seeing right now and what we will see as this continues down the street. So we'll throw it back to you, and I'll be here ready to cover as soon as these bikes get rolling.
Andrew Davis, thank you so much. Live outside Calvary Baptist Temple for us in Savannah. You can see the processional for Sergeant Kelvin Ansari has taken shape, and it appears that it is beginning to move toward Bonaventure Cemetery. So again, we should pass along to those of you just joining the live stream today. This will impact traffic in Midtown Savannah and the eastern part of our city. This is a new live look for you. So the processional has reached the Truman Parkway in Savannah. This live look is from Victory Drive, right underneath the Truman Parkway. You see the big flag above the processional there. That is provided by Chatham Fire. I saw them setting up for that around 8 o'clock this morning. And so all these folks are making sure that Sergeant Ansari will make it to his final resting place, which is Bonaventure Cemetery. That cemetery is sort of a tourist attraction on its own in our city, in addition to having deep family ties for many here. So I should let you know that the cemetery is still open through all of this, but the city is advising you that if you would like the freedom to move about, especially in the Greenwich part of the cemetery where this ceremony is going to take place, you should be advised that it might be sort of hard to travel out of the cemetery if you are currently there right now or heading there for this service. So touching to see the dozens of people who are lining the route right now to pay their respects to Sergeant Kelvin Ansari, a decorated officer with the Savannah Police Department, a decorated soldier before that. This location is sort of right outside of the Whole Foods Market in Savannah. We have law enforcement vehicles in the median, and we have members of the public who have come and are watching along the street, holding American flags. The service at Calvary Baptist Temple took about 2 hours today. We heard from several people, including Savannah Mayor Eddie DeLoach. He wanted to point out that Sergeant Ansari put citizens before himself. And he asked everyone in attendance not to take for granted how law officers protect us. It is a dangerous job, and you never know when that danger might be fatal. We heard from Officer Childs. He praised Ansari's leadership and how he molded and encouraged those around him. Lieutenant Gregory Mitchell also addressed the crowd today. He said Ansari led by example. He called to mind his wisdom, his patience, his kindness, his work ethic. Chief Roy Minter also addressed the crowd today, thanking the community for all of their support. So much has happened. We need to remember he lost his life just 1 week ago today. So much has come together. So many tributes have been paid. The outpouring of support has come from around the country and in this display that you're seeing right here. Law enforcement professionals from our region, from across the country have come here to show their support for Savannah and what we're going through right now. Chief Minter calling Ansari a great and noble man and thanked him for fighting the good fight and keeping the faith. So shortly after this point in the procession, they will turn on Skidaway Road and then turn on 36th as they make their way to the Greenwich section of Bonaventure Cemetery. The graveside service is open to the public, but once again, if you would like the ability to move freely in and around the cemetery because it butts up next to the river and there really is only one way out, you need to be aware of that if you're going to make your way there. procession. The procession for Sergeant Kelvin Ansari continues right now. On your right, you see the shot at Victory Drive and the Truman Parkway as the processional is approaching Bonaventure Cemetery. On the left, you see outside Calvary Baptist Temple in Savannah, where the funeral service just took place. You see the motorcycles who are escorting the sergeant's body, heading out onto Waters Avenue, making their way to Victory Drive. They'll eventually go to Skidaway and then 36th, and then end up at the cemetery. And there you see the hearse right there, leaving the area. A graveside service will take place at Bonaventure in the Greenwich section. That is once again a public gathering as Savannah continues to mourn the loss of a local hero who served our country and our community for decades. So the procession that started in Midtown Savannah at the Calvary Baptist Temple continues on to Victory Drive. As News 3's Andrew Davis was telling us earlier, hundreds of cars are taking part in this. This procession easily started 20 minutes ago. Law enforcement personnel, state leaders, local leaders, everyone taking part to pay their respects. During the service today, we heard from Jeffrey Hilliard, who spoke on behalf of the family, is a family friend of the sergeant. He was telling the crowd that he never fell short as a father. He said they lost their superhero. And he asked the crowd to never let his legacy be lost, and actually led the crowd in something quite interesting that we don't see too much of, but sort of led them in a call and response, making them take a pledge in memory of the pledges that Sergeant Ansari made to serve his country and his community. Asked them to promise to protect and respect. There is a bit of gap in the processional now for Sergeant Kelvin Ansari as they take his body from the church the Calvary Baptist Temple to Bonaventure Cemetery in Savannah. The display you see on my right here is on Victory Drive near the Truman Parkway in Savannah, right outside of the Whole Foods Market for reference. Dozens of people, kids, pets, you name it, came out to show their support for the officer, for his family, for the Savannah Police Department. So this display in celebration of the life and memory of Sergeant Kelvin Ansari. His death occurred just 1 week ago today while responding to an armed robbery call in Savannah. Sergeant Kelvin Ansari, born July 8th of 1968 in Albany, Georgia. He attended Westtown Elementary School. He graduated from Early County High School in Blakely. He earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in Criminal Justice from Troy University and a Master of Arts degree in Management and Leadership from Webster. Ansari enlisted in the U.S. Army in 1988. He was honorably retired after 21 years. He served in Iraq, in Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. He won so many awards during his service to our country, the Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, the Humanitarian Service Medal, the Combat Infantry Badge, the Army Achievement Medal, the Valorious Unit Award, Good Conduct Medal, National Defense Medal, the Southwest Asia Service Medal. His career in law enforcement and the military spanned 31 years, all in service to his country and to his fellow man. He was a man who was well liked, he was kind, he was considerate, always positive, we're told, always encouraging. And that's the legacy these folks have shown up to pay tribute to today. The graveside service is still to come in this day of celebrating his life and legacy. That is a public gathering at the Greenwich section of Bonaventure Cemetery. We are still awaiting the arrival of the hearse on the cemetery property. We understand that part of the processional is still taking place and still making its way to this location. Chatham Fire has turned out. They provided the flag that you saw hanging over Victory Drive. The hearse that contains the body of Sergeant Kelvin Ansari. His funeral service wrapped up at Calvary Baptist Temple about 30 minutes ago, and now hundreds of mourners are waiting at Bonaventure Cemetery to pay their final respects. That's where a graveside service will be happening as soon as his body arrives there with the family members who are also making their way to the cemetery right now. We heard from several people during the service today. The governor of Georgia did not speak today, but was in attendance and had some private moments with the family before it began. We have state leaders, we have local leaders here. So many people from here, around the state, around the country have come to Savannah to show their support for the Savannah Police Department and for the family of Sergeant Kelvin Ansari. Just 50 years old, left us way too soon. This has been a week where so many people have been expressing their support for the family, expressing their feelings about what happened. This shot from the east side of Savannah, Victory Drive and the Truman Parkway. They are awaiting what's left of the procession to continue on with the remembrance celebration at the Bonaventure Cemetery today. One of the most poignant speeches that we heard today was from the sergeant's own pastor, Pastor Ricky Temple, who many of you know, of course. He advised the crowd today to learn to see beyond the difficult days, to make a decision to not let anger blur our vision. Certainly so many officers thinking about the ways in which they put their own lives on the line every day just to wear the badge. And Savannah Mayor Eddie DeLoach was saying how important it is for us all to appreciate their service and sacrifice. Now we see the camera has turned around a bit there. The folks on the bridge are standing on the Truman Parkway, awaiting what's left of the procession today. Pastor Temple also telling the crowd today, you need to believe that we can all move beyond this pain.
So again, we're waiting for the procession to come through this area. Many members of law enforcement have already come through. Many people out here waiting to pay their respects. Live in Savannah, Carly Strickland, WTOC News.
What is left of the funeral procession is making its way to Victory Drive, right near the Truman Parkway in Savannah. We do expect to see the hearse enter the picture here momentarily, carrying the body of Sergeant Kelvin Ansari and taking him to his final resting place at Bonaventure Cemetery. All of the folks in the motorcade will be attending the public graveside service there. And meanwhile, dozens, if not hundreds of people have lined the processional route in Savannah, coming out to pay their respects for his service and his sacrifice. I want to read you a list as we're waiting for the hearse to pass by of some of the accomplishments Sergeant Ansari is known for in his 30 years of public service. Of course, he was in the Army, as we've been telling you before, last 10 years or so in service to the Savannah Police Department. Recently got a promotion as soon as last year, promoted to sergeant. These are some of the awards. Meritorious Service Medal, an Army Commendation Medal, the 4th award, Army Achievement Medal, Army Good Conduct Medal, the National Defense Service Medal, the Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal, the Southwest Asia Service Medal with Bronze Service Star, the Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, the Humanitarian Service Medal, the Non-Commissioned Officer Professional Development Ribbon, the Army Service Ribbon, the Overseas Service Ribbon, the Valorous Unit Award, Meritorious Unit Commendation, Combat Infantry Badge, Army Recruiter Badge. And many of those awards were his 4th, 5th, 6th award. 6 awards for good conduct alone. 6 times he was pointed out as someone setting a great example for others. And now in the foreground there, we see the hearse carrying Sergeant Kelvin Ansari to Bonaventure Cemetery, escorted by his fellow officers. Dozens of people in this location on Victory Drive and the Truman Parkway lining the streets to pay their respects for all that he has done for our country and our community.